Hello and welcome to Real Menopause Talk. My guest today is Rhiannon Ford. Rhiannon runs her own divorce consultancy. Previously a family law solicitor, she now provides practical help and emotional support to people struggling with divorce and separation. She recently underwent a hysterectomy, but was left with no support other than basic after-surgery care. In this episode, we cover a lot, from hysterectomy recovery and osteopenia to divorce support and the surprising correlations between perimenopause and relationship struggles. So get comfortable and listen to Rhiannon's story and her advice. Hello, Rhiannon.
Hi, nice to meet you.
How are you?
I'm okay, thank you. Thanks for inviting me today.
Oh, well, thank you for coming on. I've been really excited to speak to you because divorce is bad enough as it is. Going through it at this time as well, particularly when you're more likely to have had children. I have huge sympathy for both parties. Must be very tough. First of all, though, I'd love to hear a bit about yourself, where you are, your work, how you've got to where you are, background, all that kind of thing.
Sure. So I'm single. I'm 47. It's like a dating app, isn't it? And I live on my own with my dog and I run my own business. So I run a divorce consultancy service. So I'm a divorce consultant and coach. So I support people before, during and after their divorce. My background was I was a family law solicitor. So I was a divorce lawyer and I launched my consultancy service. It'll be 12 years actually this year. So I've been running that for 12 years. I expect you're probably interested in sort of my health and menopause journey. So I'm 47, but I had a hysterectomy in 2019, but I kept my ovaries.
Right.
So I was warned that I may well go into an early menopause, although the surgeon wasn't really supportive of that. He said, oh no, that's a nonsense. So that was quite interesting because I needed to be sort of prepared because I was feeling that I was a little bit young to have been planning for that. Until I had the surgery. The biggest challenge I think I found with it was, of course, because I didn't have periods, but I had ovaries, it was very hard to be able to work out whether I was actually starting to go into sort of perimenopause. So I know a lot of friends have said to me, oh, my periods are slowing down, or I think they've stopped, or I've not had one for several months. I think I might be going or starting to go through the perimenopause. But for me, it's been quite tricky. And I've had no support from the medical people. So I was just left once I had my surgery. I just went for a checkup to check that the surgery was all okay. And that's it. No follow-up from the gynecologists. GPs haven't been interested in sort of talking to me. So that's been quite challenging, I think. So I've sort of been left really thinking, well, how will I know? I'd like to do what I can to obviously to support my own health, living on my own and running my own business. I've got to make sure, because I am my business, that I'm healthy and well to be able to support my clients in the best way possible. So that's been a bit tricky, I must say.
Nobody suggested how you might look after yourself or how you might find support, even after major surgery?
No, not at all. They talked about the sort of physical recovery. So obviously not bending down and picking things up. And, so that was just from the physical surgery recovery side, but nothing to do with the impact either mentally, emotionally, as well as physically with regards to the surgery I'd had. So I was actually okay. So I was actually okay about having the hysterectomy. I know for a lot of women, it can be really tough emotionally. I haven't got children. So I think my parents, for example, were a little bit worried about, whilst I didn't have children, I felt okay about that, having the opportunity to have them, because I was 46 at the time. So there was sort of still a little window of opportunity potentially if I did decide. I think they were worried about the impact emotionally on me, on my body, then not being available to have that opportunity any longer. But I was okay. I felt so much better because I needed the surgery because of things that were going on and had been very long term on a gynae basis, that actually it was just a relief to try and get back that quality of life for myself. But from a menopausal perspective, I wasn't given any guidance on what to expect, what to think about. The added complication for me was I have a history of chronic fatigue syndrome, ME, from a fairly young age. So I think I was about 22, 23 when I was diagnosed. And a lot of the symptoms are very similar to perimenopausal symptoms. And so I actually recognize now, in the last couple of years, where I thought I was having a relapse with my chronic fatigue syndrome symptoms, that actually I now know they were perimenopausal symptoms.
What led you to have the hysterectomy in the first place?
I had fibroids. So I had several fibroids, not as enormous as I know some poor ladies have, but it was where they were, and it was sort of what they were doing, as it were. Because of where they were, sort of geographically, if you like, it meant that I did need to have the hysterectomy. I was given the option of having, I can't remember what it was called, some other procedure, but actually I chose that actually it would be better. And I think I still stand by that. They also found when they did the surgery that I had the startings of endometriosis. So it was a good decision, I think, to sort that out. So how I realized that I was perimenopausal was I managed to break both my ankles last year, which was quite ridiculous. And how I did it as well is quite ridiculous. So I fell over my own doorstep and caught my right ankle in a broken part of the path and managed to smash both sides and dislocate it out of the joint. Anyway, it was a long journey last year, obviously, to get me back on track. I'm still in the recovery process. But what came up, so they were obviously quite surprised that at my age, I had such a spectacular break. And so the surgeons, actually, I think you get to that age, don't you, where everybody seems younger than you. So all the doctors I was seeing, and my actual surgeon was clearly younger than me, because they'd all look at the scans. You always get to see someone different, don't you, when you go to hospital? It's you never know who you're going to see. They'd all look at my scans and go, oh, gosh, you did a really good job on that ankle, didn't you? And then the next question would be, how old are you? So they were expecting me to say, although I suppose it's not very flattering, that I was a lot older than I am, because they were perhaps thinking there may be a connection with weaker bones going through menopause. I explained, obviously, I'd had a hysterectomy. I also had half my thyroid removed a few weeks before my accident. So it's a bit of a crazy time last year. So I had a bone density scan, which showed the startings of osteopenia, which is the stage before osteoporosis. But I didn't fit in the box that they were going to do anything about it. So when I spoke to, I always used a male GP who'd always said, oh, don't be ridiculous. You're far too young to be going through perimenopause. It's your chronic fatigue syndrome symptoms. But he wasn't available with lockdown. And so I ended up speaking to a lady GP who I'd not spoken to before. And I explained, and she said, well, I think we need to put you on HRT. And it sort of came as quite a surprise to me that that was the solution for the break, because I was getting very fearful that I obviously broke very easily. And she said, no, it will make a difference to your bones. You've had a hysterectomy. The sooner we start you on it, the better to sort of make sure that it doesn't develop into osteoporosis, which you are at greater risk of, not just with perimenopause, but the fact that I'd had the hysterectomy. So I've been on patches for 3 months. And that's how I've known that some of my symptoms weren't chronic fatigue syndrome, because they've gone away.
Gosh, how remarkable. So what were your symptoms predominantly?
I was getting some hot flushes, but very, very mild. So I wasn't really putting it down to this is definitely perimenopause, but fatigue, problems with sleeping, brain fog, missing words. So even the most simple word chair, and that was very stressful in meetings, if I, obviously, because I have to be the sort of authoritative person and providing advice to clients. And I'd always just thought I've got to cope with it because it's my chronic fatigue. There's no cure for that. But they have, it's not perfect, but it has decreased dramatically, which has made a big difference to my quality of life.
How extraordinary that you would have to break yourself so severely to arrive at that conclusion. How did you feel straight after the hysterectomy?
I followed all the instructions of sort of not being able to pick things up and bend, which was quite restrictive because I live on my own. I don't think I did as much as I should have done to look after myself. So I have put on a lot of weight, which could be a mixture of perimenopause, not being able to exercise with the 3 surgeries I've had. I'm a big comfort eater as well, I'll be honest. So I think physically, I was very lucky actually, because I had keyhole surgery. Mm-hmm. And I remember the gynecology nurse doing my pre-op explained to me that ladies who have keyhole surgery have to be very, very careful with their recovery, because if you have open surgery, it's you can physically see the scars and the marks, and it's much easier to know you need to be careful. So not to stretch and bend and allow your body to rest. Whereas with keyhole surgery, I mean, it's quite amazing what they can do. I had 3 little holes, which, are just tiny little scars now. And what she reminded me of is, you have had the same surgery. In fact, it ended up being a bit more because they found other things and there were some complications, which luckily I was under anesthetic, so I didn't know anything about. But it's, you do have to be more careful when there's not a physical reminder of how much your body's gone through, the trauma of the physical surgery, as well as getting your head around what's actually taken place. And that was strange, I must say, to think. It is quite strange to think that is what's happened. Yeah. I can say it in quite a matter of fact way, but obviously it's a major surgery from a mental and emotional perspective. Interesting, actually. I was talking about this to somebody yesterday. So my surgeon, brilliant. He knew what he was doing, and very clever man. But when he was talking to me about the surgery, he said, "Would you like me to remove your ovaries?" And I, nobody sort of talked through. I just presumed naively that everything would need to go, and everything's connected. I'm not very good with biology. I said, "Oh gosh, I don't know. Well, what's your advice? What do I need to be thinking about?" "Oh, well, you can decide on the day." And he was quite sort of flippant about it. And then sure enough, on the day, I was in the waiting bay, ready to go into the anesthetic section before going into surgery. And he pops along to see me and says, "Right, so am I whipping them out? Am I taking out your ovaries, or did you want to keep them?" And it's a bit of a, gosh, that's quite, I was okay about it because I'd made my decision. I'd done my research. I'd made my decision that actually, if they're healthy, I want them to stay because, that can make quite a positive difference if I don't need them removed. If I had a choice, I thought, well, I want to do the best for myself. And if they're healthy organs, why remove them? So that's the big difference. If you have a surgical menopause, they did warn me I'd have to go, you're actually given HRT as part of your discharge pack. So you're given it straight away because your body goes into huge shock. I was very lucky and I didn't have that. So the only difference for me was my period stopped and I was recovering from the physical surgery. But I think for me, not that I'm an expert, I'm very pleased I kept my ovaries. There's no point getting rid of healthy organs if you don't have to. And the impact of doing that when you don't need to can be quite major for people, I think.
Yeah, I know so little about the whole procedure and need to learn a lot more. But that is one thing that I've heard is that if you have the option, keep them. It will serve you better in the long run.
Yes, absolutely.
But, goodness. I mean, do you want them? Are we whipping them out? It's not like how much are we cutting off your hair today?
I know. It's quite crazy. I suppose they do say, not being disrespectful to consultants and surgeons, but they do say they're not the best necessarily with bedside manner. They're good at what they're good at. I think perhaps he was just trying to relax me. Perhaps, I don't know. Or I was his last surgery of the day. So maybe he was just a bit jolly about, because it's on a Friday, he was going to play golf. I don't know. But it was a bit, gosh, okay, right. This is actually part of my body. And it was sort of serving quite a big purpose. But yes, I am pleased I made the decision I did.
And how are you feeling then currently in terms of perimenopause?
I'm managing okay. I think actually now I have recognized, so I haven't been diagnosed by a doctor as being perimenopausal, but I think now I have realized that I am. There's some comfort in that. So because I know why I'm having particular symptoms. I know why sometimes I want to sort of kill everybody. Doesn't happen very often, and I've never followed it through, I promise. But, it's actually quite reassuring that actually I'm not going mad. I'm not having a breakdown. This is actually just what my body is dealing with at the moment. There's lots of changes going on, and there have been anyway for my body with the 3 surgeries I've had in just 2 years. And I was thinking perhaps maybe it's the a bit of sort of post-traumatic stress of the fact that I had this big accident and then I've had these 2 major surgeries. But actually, it is quite reassuring to think, actually, it's not that I'm not coping well enough. My body is going through a lot. So I think that's made quite a difference. And now I'm talking about it with friends. Friends are opening up a bit more about their own experiences, I found as well. Because I think a lot of ladies are still very private about it. And there's nothing wrong with that. But it would be a shame if we can't just talk about it more openly to give each other support. And we're all in the same gang, aren't we? It's, you know, it's nice to have that, to feel like a community.
I've found that half the struggle is knowing that there are other people, other women going through exactly the same, or maybe slightly different, but essentially going through the same as you are. And then, you know, like you just said, you're not going mad. You have a psychotic day. It's okay. It's normal. So yes, exactly. Having support and being in good company is crucial.
Yes, absolutely.
So I've read your piece about divorce and menopause, and I would love to hear more about the connection between the two.
What came to my mind, obviously with my own journey, it's obviously more prominent, and I've been reading books and learning about it. And then I realized actually that I'm working with quite a lot of clients who are of similar age to me these days. So previously, a lot of my clients, so I've been working in the family law for over 20 years, including my time as a solicitor. And a lot of that time, my clients were older than me. But what I found now is a lot of my clients are middle-aged, like myself. And so it's become, and with my own experience, it sort of has become more, I've become more aware, I think, of what people are going through. So the consultancy service that I run, yes, I provide help and guidance with regards to the legal process. But as important to me is my coaching with clients, which is supporting them as an individual with what they're going through. And what's always has been really important to me is treating that person as an individual. So, you know, they're not just a person going through divorce. The legal process is the same for everybody. You know, the law is the same, but that individual person has their own experience. And what I do with my clients is I don't just talk to them about how they're feeling about the divorce. I actually get to know my clients quite well a lot of the time. And I want to understand what else is going on for them in their life. Because from my perspective, if there are other things going on that are adding to that bucket of stress and worry with the divorce process, if we can perhaps address those things, as well as hopefully the help that I can provide with the divorce itself, it can make quite a positive difference to people. What's been quite interesting, before I did the blog and before my own personal journey in the perimenopausal world, as it were, began, it wasn't really something that I would talk to clients about quite openly. I've got to be very careful, I appreciate even now, because people are very private and I don't want to make assumptions. Interestingly, just a few weeks ago, one client that I'm working with post-divorce, so I've worked with her through her divorce process, and we're working together now on more of a coaching basis with that sort of transitional period and settling her into her new sort of single life. We had a session at the beginning of the year where she started telling me about how she'd been feeling at the beginning of this year. And she basically listed all the symptoms that I have, and I know a lot of my friends have, perimenopausal symptoms. And I know her very well, so I knew that it would be a comfortable conversation. And I also explained my own situation, and she's known me through my surgery, so it was quite sort of natural. And I said, oh, have you thought that perhaps it's perimenopausal symptoms? And first of all, she was a little bit embarrassed that I'd mentioned the sort of menopause phrase, which was quite interesting. So she's in her early 50s. She hadn't even considered that she was perimenopausal because she still has regular periods and she hasn't had hot flushes. So it's quite interesting. And I was the same, to be honest. I did think before my experience and reading a lot more about it, that you had to know when your periods had stopped and you had to be having really nasty hot flushes to know you're going through the perimenopause. And now, of course, I know that that's not the case at all. Some people actually, like myself, don't really get hot flushes, but I do get lots of other things. So I did sort of explain that to her. And I said, I'm just saying that to sort of put it out there that actually, if it's adding on, because she was struggling really badly with anxiety. So she was struggling with anxiety, brain fog. She was losing words. She was struggling with sleep, and it was affecting her quality of life. But also it was affecting her with new year, new start. I'm working with Rhiannon. I want to move forward with my life in 2022. What's the matter with me? Am I being lazy? Am I procrastinating? Am I not doing enough for myself? So I just sort of put it out there that it might be worth her thinking about it. And I recommended a book that I'd read that's quite an easy read to sort of identify bits and pieces and practical help. And she did seem quite reassured. I said, because if it is your drop in estrogen and all the funny stuff that goes on with all our hormones, if you can do something about it, why wouldn't you do the best for yourself to actually then know that you're looking after yourself? Self-care is always a big thing that I talk to my clients about. And that you're putting yourself in the best position possible, not only for your perimenopausal years, but actually for your life generally and your quality of life and all the lovely things and exciting things I know that you want to do in 2022. Anyway, she has spoken to her GP and she has been given some medication. So I'm hoping that I'm due to speak to her next week. So I'm hoping that can make quite a positive difference to her. But I agree with something you said earlier, that it affects everybody. So going through, perimenopausal symptoms doesn't just affect the woman themselves, it can affect their family and friends. And so it does put, or can put, a lot of pressure on relationships. So what I always want to make sure, because a lot of my clients come to me when they're thinking about separating, or they've made the decision, but they haven't yet embarked on the legal process. So in other words, there's no solicitor in place, there's no formal process in place. And I always want to make sure, as much as obviously I'm able to, that actually they make the right decision for themselves. And what's come up for me with the fact that I've recognized that a lot of my clients are of a similar age to me is we need to work out if this is the right decision for them and their life, or whether they are struggling personally in their life at the moment with things that actually could be fixed without having to, divorce their husband or separate or think that their relationships come to an end. So I'm very much more aware that needs to be something that I perhaps need to bring into conversations with clients, obviously when it's appropriate and in the right way. Only a few clients have said to me over the years, and this doesn't help that I'm also going through perimenopause at the moment. And I suppose because I wasn't going through it personally, it wasn't at the forefront of my mind. But I'm very conscious now that we need to look after that individual person going through divorce. So a lot of the divorce symptoms, which sounds horrible, but the symptoms that I associate with divorce are very similar to perimenopausal symptoms. And I'm not suggesting that it's for me to say which is one and which is the other, but it's a double whammy for ladies. It's the combination. You're going to be stressed. You may be struggling with sleep. You may be very tired. You may have decision fatigue, as I call it. You may have brain fog from going through the perimenopause or going through your divorce, or both. And the danger for me, or the danger for my clients rather, from my perspective as a divorce consultant, is I want them, if divorce is the right thing for them, I want them to put themselves in the best position possible to go through that divorce in the most healthy, positive way for them themselves, but also making strong, informed decisions that they can live with as they move forward. But also then that their next step, if you like, the transitional period from going through the divorce to them being divorced, the recovery process is kept to a minimum because we've looked after them the best we can through the post process. So they're ready then to sort of carry on with their lives. So one of the things that I enjoy that I didn't have the opportunity of doing when I was a solicitor. So as a solicitor, you come to the end of the legal case, you send off the final bill, what's called the decree absolute certificate, the court order. And then you never hear from Mrs. Jones again, quite rightly so. Hopefully Mrs. Jones won't need you again. What I enjoy about my job is it doesn't necessarily end there. So I also can work with clients post-divorce, like the lady that I was talking about earlier. And what's lovely then is seeing people blossom and seeing people and feeling. So what I say to clients is your solicitor won't be around any longer. And actually, obviously, they're pleased from a certain perspective, but also they can feel a little bit, oh gosh, what happens now? I'm on my own. And so I always make sure that they know that my support is still there. I know them, I know what they've gone through, and I can carry on supporting them through the transitional period and for long as they want. And I have noticed that a few clients are now going through or have recognized, so post-divorce clients have recognized that they're going through perimenopausal symptoms. Perhaps they were during the divorce but didn't recognize it as such. They thought it was divorce symptoms, or it's become more pronounced, or in fact, they've only just started going through perimenopausal symptoms. Now they're divorced. And that has an impact as well. So, it's a big life change going through divorce. And you're coming to terms with the fact your family dynamic has changed. You may be feeling, for example, for the mum, if the children are with them for the majority of the time, they're then doing a lot of the parenting on their own. That can be very stressful, tiring physically, but mentally and emotionally, with obviously everything that being a mum involves. And that can be, that's a lot for somebody to cope with. Add in the perimenopausal symptoms, it's a lot. So I actually think that whether people are going through perimenopausal symptoms during their divorce process, or it kicks in, or they start to recognize that that's what's happening after their divorce, I think both have their challenges. And I think it can be really tough. And I want to make sure that people get as much support as possible. What I haven't had yet, so I do work with men as well, but I haven't had a chap talk to me recognizing that his wife going through the divorce is going through the perimenopause. But I think when I was thinking about before our call this morning, and when I was thinking about some of my chap clients, and this is going to sound awful about men, so sorry about this, but some of the reasons they give me as to why they want a divorce, actually now, when I think about it and take a step back, could actually be their poor wife struggling with perimenopausal symptoms. So we don't have a physical relationship any longer. I mean, ladies and men say that to me. And they look at me as if they don't know why. So obviously, one of the symptoms of perimenopause is a lack of libido, the drop in estrogen. So when we've got estrogen, we've got our full tank of estrogen. As women, it sort of focuses us to sort of give to others. But when that estrogen starts to drop, what I've been reading and understanding is we start to then think about, well, actually, what do I need? And that can be a big thing, obviously, prioritizing themselves, whether that creates then the relationship dynamic changes it with the couple, or whether the lady clients just think, do you know what, I am unhappy and I haven't been happy for a long time and I want to do something about it. I've got my life ahead of me. So yes, from the chap's perspective, they, lack of libido, they don't necessarily call it that. They just say we don't have a physical relationship any longer and I feel lonely and we don't have that connection. We don't spend time together. And it's sort of quite interesting that actually that could just be quite natural. It could be quite natural. And I know some people that recognize they were probably going through perimenopause when they made the decision to be divorced, but it was still the right decision. But I think it's still important for people to realize that it's a big life change, making that decision to go through divorce. And it's got to be right. You've got to be comfortable with it, not just now with how you're feeling and thinking, but in the future, 6 months, 6 years, 10 years down the line, that actually you did the best for yourself in those circumstances and you made the best decision you could.
It must be very hard for them to see their wives going through struggles if they don't understand it in particular, and feeling that maybe it is all their fault or the wife's fault, or apportioning blame, when actually it could be something as simple as hormones. And at this age, we've often got children to look after, maybe elderly parents to look after, maybe a career as well. It's a busy time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think the ladies I work with who, and this isn't, I don't mean this to be a generalization because it happens with both sexes, but the ladies that come to me whose husbands have had affairs, it's making me think a lot more about, I wonder if that, not that I'm saying it's the lady's fault for not recognizing she was perimenopausal or whatever, but there's a lot more to it. So why did the other person, whether we're talking obviously about ladies, so I'm just talking about it's the husband who's having the affair, but it does happen the other way around. But, what if it was because the man felt that, there was this lack of connection. They didn't have a physical relationship. He thought he'd done things that wrong and, they no longer had things in common. And actually, as you say, it was a hormonal thing. And had they both recognized that and worked together, so yes, the lady recognizing and doing what she could, but also him recognizing and actually before deciding to go off with somebody else, thinking, well, let me just see if I can save my marriage first. I love my wife. I've got a family with her. Unfortunately, that doesn't often happen, or the communication where one person has tried to make it work before they have made their decision to go elsewhere, which is a horrible way of putting it, but you know what I mean? It just hasn't happened in the most effective way. And so they haven't been working as a partnership to see if the relationship can be saved. One has decided by themselves it can't be, which I always think, you know, that does happen, obviously. And 9 times out of 10 with clients that come to me, it is one person making the decision rather than both of them together. But it's a shame not to give it that opportunity, I think, as you say, to sort of see if you can salvage your life that was once happy.
We're working very hard to make sure that menopause and perimenopause have no taboo attached. How is it with divorce these days?
I think it has made huge improvement. I think it's more common now, for example, for children, if their parents are going through divorce, that someone else in their class that they probably know, their mum and dad have probably gone through divorce as well, rather than it being I'm the only one, which is very positive, I think. The stigma is going. It's still around from a personal perspective. So when it's an individual person going through divorce, I can honestly say that nobody in the sort of 20 years I've been doing this work has come to me happy about the fact that they're going to get a divorce and they want my help to do that. You know, there are lots of emotions tied up in making that decision. And they can be, you know, a lot of people feel guilt and shame and I'm a failure and don't want to be divorced because that reflects on me as a person. And, you know, I work with clients to make sure that they realize that's not the case. It does make a difference on that particular person with everything they're going through if they have the right support system in place. So if family and friends are being unsupportive or not providing the right support, so they may think they're being supportive, but it's not the right support, it can make quite a difference on people because you can feel quite lonely and or alone when you're going through divorce, even if you've got lots of people around you. And it's also still very private. So that's a lot of why I started my consultancy business, because you don't just want to talk to a solicitor, and it's not just legal advice that people need. There's so much going on for them. And a lot of my clients come to me before they've started talking to friends or family. So they want to talk to somebody where it's going to be neutral, non-judgmental, confidential. They can say whatever they like. They know it's not going to go anywhere. So they can have that vent or just sort of to unload really, so that it can help them get some clarity about their thoughts and feelings. And I'm not going to have any opinions. So I'm not going to say, oh, well, I never liked him anyway. I don't know why you married him. Or, you know, you've clearly not been happy for many years. Or what do you mean? You're mad. You've got the best idyllic life ever. Why would you want to get to, you know, they're not going to have anything like that. They're going to get answers to questions about what could life look like or what does the process involve for them to go away and make some informed decisions. The other thing that's really positive, to get a bit nerdy, is the law for divorce is changing in April. So if somebody wants to get divorced now and they haven't been living apart for 2 years, which that's the majority of people, most people don't separate and live apart for 2 years, then you have to choose one of 2 grounds to get divorced. And that has to be either adultery or what's called unreasonable behavior. Now, both of those are pretty horrid because it's appointing blame onto your spouse, which can be very uncomfortable for both parties. From, I think it's the 6th of April, but anyway, the beginning of April, we're getting rid of the blame divorce side of things. So it's going to be a lot more straightforward. People can make an application and it's just a statement basically saying the relationship's irretrievably broken down. So there's no mudslinging. It's also getting rid of the opportunity of people defending divorces so that the divorce can go through. But the other really positive thing is couples can make the application together, which isn't available now. So then it looks like it's, or it is, a joint decision, which can take pressure off and help put things on the best positive footing possible for the divorce process itself. It doesn't have to be ugly and difficult. So that's going to be really positive, I think. And I think that's going to help take away the stigma of divorce and make people feel a lot more comfortable that actually it's okay. It means that they've made a decision that actually they want to make a positive change in their life.
That feels like a great step in the right direction because language is so important. And if there isn't any blame and it is an agreement, then it feels much smoother already just listening to you saying that. And also, I really hope that they do take the time to look beyond the immediate possibilities of why and into what's going on for them as well, like you're suggesting.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you have any parting words of advice, either for in terms of perimenopause, menopause, or in terms of relationships?
I've got some tips that are in my blog that I thought might be quite helpful to say to people. So this is talking to ladies who are going through divorce and have perimenopausal symptoms, or perhaps didn't recognize that they had perimenopausal symptoms. They thought it was all about divorce. So these are sort of practical things really that can make some positive changes. So the big thing, whether you're going through divorce and you are perimenopausal, or whether you're just going through divorce, is you can have brain fog, and brain fog can mean that it's easy to forget things. And when you're going through a divorce, you're going to be faced with, important decisions, meetings with professionals where you're going to be given advice. And it's important that you do what you can to put yourself in the best position possible. So the big thing, and I'm a big one for this, is write things down. Write things down, because when you forget something and it's something that you know is important, or you're already struggling with feelings of anxiety, that stress just increases. So write things down, and as much as possible, avoid booking important meetings in or making important decisions on days or times of the month when you know your brain fog or fatigue or anxiety is particularly bad. So I know there are lots of ladies that track their monthly cycles and things like that. Or if they just happen to know, I'm struggling at the moment, I've not slept for a few days, don't then have a big meeting with your solicitor or your ex on a day when you've not been sleeping for a few days. So it's practical things that we can do. And I suppose the big thing really is be kind to yourself. Recognize that actually you're a human being and you're going to have lots of thoughts and feelings about everything, whether that's driven by hormones or lack thereof, whether that's driven by worries over the divorce, and actually doing what you can to help yourself. So simplifying things, taking control of the controllables, and letting go of things you can't control, and making sure you've got that support system in place, whether that's friends and family, or whether that's somebody like myself where you can just talk to somebody sort of completely confidentially.
That's wonderful, Rhiannon. Thank you so much. It's been fascinating to talk to you, and a massive support, I'm sure, for anybody out there who is having relationship difficulties.
My pleasure. Thanks for inviting me.
Take care. Thanks. Bye. You can find Rhiannon on her website, rhiannonford.co.uk, and on Instagram @The Divorce Navigator. I will put her details in the show notes. Thank you for listening. Follow us on the podcast apps and subscribe to the newsletter so that you never miss an episode. Please leave us a review, as it does boost our ratings and we would love to reach as many people as possible. I look forward to seeing you in the next episode.